This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. We come to you regularly with short business episodes, short private equity episodes, interviews with brilliant private equity and business leaders, and then what we call body of life episodes or advice episodes. Today is one of those advice episodes, and the concept is three keys to building greatness. And let me talk about these very quickly. The first concept is nothing gets done great without building teams. And at the end of the day, people ask me, how do you touch so many things? How do you do different things, stuff like that? And all of my success, not that it's been so great, but all of my success dates back to the period of time when I was heavily involved in building teams and working with people and so forth. And at the end of the day, anybody's success is due to building teams. That's the first concept is if you want to do anything significant, you can't do it yourself. You're a piece of the puzzle. You're not the puzzle. You have to build great teams. The second concept is two great books that I have viewed as influential in this area, and I'll throw in a third as well. The first one is the great sort of quintessential book by James Collins, Good to Great. And Jim Collins went through a bunch of different companies. And basically the concept he came up with was less important is strategy. More important is you get the right people on the team, the right people on the bus, you used to call it, in the right positions. And so much of being great in business is ultimately sorting out those teams, sorting out who you work with, what people you work with, what teams you work with. And that is essentially everything in business is building teams and sorting out those teams. If you could do that, you could adjust to lots of different strategies. If you have a strategy but not great teams, you can't do anything. So that's his concept. The second concept that I absolutely love, and it's a similar but different concept, is a book called Buy Back Your Time. In this book, I enjoyed tremendously. It's by a guy named Dan Martell. I listened to it on Apple, audiobooks, but really liked it. And his concept was the first thing you got to do as a leader is be willing to invest in things that will buy back your time so you can spend more time in the most creative, most important things that you're doing. And I think that he is just right on this. And I loved it. He, together with an executive coach, inspired me again to go back to the well and hire a new assistant and stuff like that, which I did several months ago. And it's really been incredibly helpful in terms of getting some of the stuff off of my plate so I do more of the stuff that I really want to do and really can advance things and really focus my energies and efforts. So that's the sort of the second concept. There's those two books, Good to Great, and the Dan Martell concept, Buy Back Your Time. Absolutely love it. The third concept we talk about in business is, in the old days, we always talked about the concept that it's more important to be respected than liked. And one of the things that I think has happened over the last 10, 15, 20 years is I would say that those today are equally important, because as people have grown to the spot where everybody's got choices in who they work for, at least most people do, particularly in a what was a booming economy and maybe still is a booming economy, though some concerns about as I see companies like Boozel and Hamilton take it on the chin, and some other companies taking the chin that are quintessential professional services firm down about 9-10% yesterday. But at the end of the day, in business, it's very important not just to be great at what you do, but to be liked as well. Because if you want to build teams, if you work with you for the long run, you don't have to be a cheerleader. You don't have to be the nicest person in the world, but you better be liked and respected and care about your people, not just respect. I think both are really, really important. A couple other quick shout outs to give. I mean, aside from Chanel Bunger, our podcast producer, who I just love working with, because Benjamin, our research assistant, who's just a fantastic research executive assistant, goes to Tufts University, the daughter of one of my brightest couple friends, Mark and Cindy, just a brilliant young woman. But the one other shout out I'll give today is to a book by Dan Sullivan, who's the founder of Strategic Coach. And the more you listen to Dan Sullivan, the more you like him. And I didn't love Strategic Coach. I was part of it for a while. I feel like everybody in the room was trying to, to show how important they were. I just couldn't stand it, quite frankly. But I will tell you this, Dan Sullivan and many, many people have a great experience with Strategic Coach. That might be how I'm wired. I have a hard time listening to people and everybody bragging and talking and everything about their own businesses. It was just too much for me. But I will tell you this about Dan Sullivan. He is a brilliant person. And two of his books, Who Not How, finding the right who's, the right people to work with, resonates with me, as well as 10X versus 2X. If I want to trudge along in something, I can do it myself. If I really want to get big at something I'm trying to do, then I need help. And I got to think of things in a 10x way versus a 2x way. And I just love that thought process from Dan Sullivan. So those are a few of the shout outs today. I'll throw in a couple other things today. McDonald's missing on its earnings, missing on its profits, its own trouble, its own problems. That's all I've got today. B of A, JP Morgan performing really well, each of about 24% year to date. Great leadership at both banks. That's a side note as well. We've got a lot of sort of side notes here. And finally, I guess I'll give a big shout out and thank you to everybody who listens. The Becker Private Equity Business Podcast ranked #1 this week in the Apple Business News category, surrounded by different Wall Street Journal podcasts. It always makes me happy to be in that great company. Thank you for listening. If you ever want to join us on the podcast, they're sponsored episodes. But if you got somebody who really you think should join us, who is so great they don't have to be sponsored, feel free. Text Scott Becker 773-766-5322. Thank you very much. A special shout out, as always, to Becker's Healthcare, CEO Jessica Cole, McGuire Woods Leadership, Amber Walsh, Holly Buckley, Bart Walker, David Pivnik. Thank you all for all your support. Thank you.